coming up next.
And we're at this coffee shop, and we're talking, and I'm crying, and I'm just, so in my emotions. And he's like, I want you to pray with me. Now, mind you, I had never prayed before, ever before. I was not an avid churchgoer. I was not. I believed in God, and that's about as far as my religion went, if that's what you want to call it. My spirituality, that's better. So he tells me, pray with me. And I'm like, I don't know how to pray. The only prayer I've ever heard was the serenity prayer, and that's in an AA meeting.
Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast, where the chains of fixing and striving are broken and joy is rediscovered in Christ. You're here because you know there's more for you, a life beyond addiction's chaos, rooted in God's peace and promises. This is the place where Christian women like you learn to release the weight of fixing and striving and instead lean into God's strength to create a home filled with love, grace, and hope. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Proverbs 31:25. That's you. You may not feel like it yet, but you are stronger than you know. And God has so much more for you than carrying someone else's addiction. Here, we'll uncover how to set healthy boundaries with love and a little humor. Find resilience and grace in the messy moments of life. Celebrate small victories and embrace joy like never before. Lean into God's promises for restoration and strength because He's not done with your story or your loved ones. This is your invitation to rise up, embrace your worth in God's kingdom, and take back what's been stolen by addiction, your peace, your joy, your future. Your faith is the foundation, and your boundaries are the bridge, and God's truth is your guide. I'm Tanya Gioia, your host and fellow traveler on this journey through the chaos of addiction. I'm here to cheer you on, equip you with tools that work, and share the truth that's changed my life. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Together, we'll uncover how to create safe, loving space for healing, starting with your own heart and home. By setting boundaries, trusting God's plan, and embracing His truth, you can reclaim your joy, your peace, and your family's future. Then you will be able to stand firm for your family and legacy as a kingdom daughter, a woman who can laugh at the days to come, knowing her identity is secure in Christ. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and get comfortable. Let's walk this journey together. We're about to take back what's been stolen, create a safe, healing space for you and your family, and rediscover the joy God has waiting for you. Welcome to Faith Over Addiction. I'm Tanya Gioia. This is a podcast that's focused on helping women recover their identity in Christ and to stay grounded while they are loving and caring for someone who is struggling with addiction. And today I have Alicia Bloss and Damian Bloss, and they're going to share their relationship story. So we're not so focused on this happened in the addiction and then that happened. We're focusing on what so many of you have asked for is, how do I see both sides? How do I see what's going on for both people? This is what's happening for me, but what is happening for the other person? So Damian, do you want to lead us off with, just kind of a rounded piece of your story, where you've come from and where you're going? And then Alicia will have you hop in and share a little bit about that too. They are married folks, so there you go.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. My name is Damian Bloss. I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 13th, 2020. And a little bit about my story real quick is that, it wasn't your conventional story where I grew up around it and things like that. So I was about 18 or 19 when, I started to self-destruct, turn to alcohol to suppress emotions and things like that. A close family member of mine died by suicide, and I took it very hard. It was very hard. I'm the only one he told about it, and so I took that guilt, and I just did not know how to process any of it, and held on to it for about 20 years before I got sober.
Awesome. Now, Alicia, how do you come into the story? What's your story?
How much time do we have again? Um, so Damien and I met originally back in 2006. We met through a mutual friend. He worked with one of my best friends, and so we just happened to meet each other, in passing. And in May of 2010, we were both going through a separation with our previous spouses, and we ran into each other one night, and it literally the rest is it's just history. So I had known a little bit about his story. I didn't know a lot about him at the time. We'd only hung out maybe once or twice a year, if that, and of course around a whole bunch of other people. But once we actually started to get to know each other, I I didn't realize right away. I think it honestly took me maybe about a year or two before I realized that he had a legitimate drinking problem. Those first couple of years, I think when we've talked about this numerous times, that we fed off of each other and our trauma that we might have had previously, the drinking that we both were doing at the time. The biggest difference between his drinking and my drinking back then was that he would be drinking all day, literally all day, from 6 a.m. until he would pass out at 9 o'clock at night. And then, depending on the day, he'd wake up a couple hours later and drink again and then pass out. So it was like a constant thing. Would just hold on to all of that during the day, and I would just wait for the kids to go to bed. So those first couple of years, we actually fed off of each other when it came to that. Um, it was it was probably about 2 years into our relationship when, or about a no, hold on, 1, 2, yeah, almost 2 years into our relationship when we had our youngest daughter. Um, and that was right around the time looking back, I think that's really when I started to see certain things because, obviously when you're pregnant, you can't drink.
Right.
So there would be, random beer cans in the fridge. And I'm like, that's weird. I know that they weren't there yesterday. And, he would say, oh, I found it in the back of the fridge, or, oh, it just happened to be in my car. Um, I think those couple of months too, I was holding a lot of um, anger. I started to think, I apologize. I started to feel the anger start within me because one, I didn't think it was fair. It's not fair that, he gets to go out and do whatever he wants. He gets to drink and, have all the fun. And here I am, I'm pregnant. I can't do anything. And being sober and seeing that was literally the first instinct of mine that this is not normal behavior. And it wasn't it wasn't like he was doing it on the weekends or just after work. It just seemed like it was more than necessary at the time, and I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And again, I had heard stories basically from my best friend, and they were nothing was ever bad. I never heard anything negative about him. It was all just Damien likes to drink, and
Mm.
Damien likes to have fun. And I believe that year was the year I started to kind of hide everything from everyone on how he was and how he was drinking and how much he was drinking. And never in the 10 years almost after that was I ever afraid of him. I was never
Mm-hmm.
scared. I was scared for him. I was terrified to talk to people about it. I lied to everybody in my entire life. I lied to my parents. I
Mhm.
would lie to his parents. I lied to my friends because I knew deep down that that wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we get married in 2013, but we have to count all the time. That's how long, like, it'll be 15 years next month that we've been together, and I still have to count the rest of the numbers. Yeah, so we got married in 2013. We moved again into another house, and that he can even tell you that is the beginning of his severe drinking. Um, that is where he would drink before work. He would drink on his way home from work. He would, pour out whatever alcohol we had in the house. He would drink it and then he would pour it, back up with water. Um, and that was probably around the time that I didn't know if we were going to make it. I didn't know how to get past that. I didn't know where my husband was. The man I was looking at, as much as an alcoholic, they will look in the mirror and they'll be like, I don't know who I'm looking at right now. The loved ones, the family members, the friends, it's the exact same feeling that this is not the man I married. You look like him, you on occasion sound like him, but this is not the man that I married. And it broke me. I would put our daughter to bed at night and I'd use the excuse, oh, she doesn't like me. She doesn't like going to sleep unless I'm in there. I have to wait until she falls asleep. Now it's because I would sit on the floor next to her bed and we would say our prayers at night, and I would then for another half an hour pray continuously over and over and over and over again, and it would be the same prayer every single night. And I felt I felt like I felt like that was the only thing that I had to still hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing else. I had nothing else to hold on to because I felt like my marriage was just going to fall apart because he was going to keep doing whatever it was that he wanted to do without any repercussions. He didn't seem to me at the time that he cared about me. He didn't care about our marriage. He didn't care about the kids. It was whatever Damian wanted, Damian was going to do because Alicia was going to be there to take care of it. And I did. I took care of it for 10 years without anybody batting an eye.
Yeah. Damien, what's processing as you're hearing this? What I'm assuming you've heard it before. What were you doing during this time?
Oh wow. Like she said, anything I wanted. I knew that she was there. She was going to pick up the pieces. I took complete advantage of the whole situation. I was manipulative and narcissistic at times, and just nobody mattered but myself. Not the kids. And it's very sad to say, but not the kids, not my family, not my wife. Nothing at all mattered except when is Damien going to get his next drink, and when is Damien going to be happy? What can I do to make myself happy? And it's I remember at one point I was sitting alone at the house, and I was looking around, and I'm like, none of this makes me happy. Why am I still here?
Mm.
And, that point, and I remember thinking this, and in the moment, of course, I did not care. But, looking back at it now and thinking, like, wow, I really had everything that I could ever wanted, everything that I used to dream about, everything that I used to wish for. I had it, and I was letting it slip away. I was basically just throwing it away just so I could drink because, drinking at that time, it was no longer fun for me. It was a means of survival. That was the only thing that I could do to survive. And, it's so when I hear her talk about this, and like you said, I have heard this a number of times, and every single time it breaks my heart all over again because I can't believe that I was throwing all that away for something that had such a hold of my life, and just could not break that. I had no idea how to break it until I did, of course, but at that time, I had no idea.
When you're let's grab the piece of this was no longer fun.
Hmm.
I'm doing this for survival. What when was that recognition and you didn't leave? What held you there?
Well, what held me there was that I felt safe. I felt safe in a way where I know that if something happened to me, she'd be able to fix it in a way to, if something were to happen physically and I can't get, say, to the hospital or something, I know she's there and she'll be able to get me to where I need to be. Excuse me. And when I realized that it was just for survival was when I realized that I become a person that I said that I never would become. And
Mm.
that was sitting outside of a liquor store before they open. I couldn't, the time that I would go without a drink before I would go through withdrawal got shorter and shorter and shorter to where it was a constant. There was a drink in my hand constantly. Any kind of drink at all. It didn't matter what it was. I didn't care as long as it relieved my symptoms. And when I became that person, I was the one sitting outside of a liquor store at, 8 o'clock in the morning. They don't open till 9. I'm sitting there sweating profusely. I'm shaking uncontrollably, and I just cannot get myself together. The sweating. I remember this one time, dead winter, you know, freezing, below freezing outside, and I'm just in a short sleeve shirt because I'm so hot from sweating. I can't control the shakes, and I'm waiting for this liquor store to open, and they're just taking their good old time to me. And I happen to glance at myself in the rearview mirror as I'm sitting in my car waiting. I'm like, what am I doing? What is this? How do I get out of this? Seriously want to get out of this, but I don't know how. And, I could get that drink and it would bring me back to normalcy. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. But I couldn't go more than a half an hour, 20 minutes without another drink because, I start going through it again.
You said something really, I think, important. It relieved my symptoms.
Mm.
What was happening physically for you?
I could feel myself I was uncontrollable, mentally, physically. Everything was, I couldn't control it. It had a grasp on my life so tight that no matter what I did, it was always there for me. I needed to be there for me, and it was when I would have take a couple drinks, I could literally feel the life coming back into my body. The sweats, they would suddenly stop. The shaking, it was completely gone. I could see clear. I could literally see clear because I would be seeing doubles or it would be blurred, extremely blurred. Everything just started coming back to me. And that was me being normal. Now, that's what I needed to be normal.
Mm. And my understanding is you were probably at a point where you were having organ shutdown. You were having issues that really, had you tried to go cold turkey, there would have been major physical repercussions. Am I right in thinking
Oh,
that?
absolutely. In fact, I did try a couple times to do it,
Hmm.
on my own, and each time it got worse and worse. I did it about three, four times trying to get sober at one point, and each time it just got worse and worse. And the last time I started hallucinating and, my I could see the whites in my eyes starting to turn yellow. And my pigment was also turning yellow. My face was so bloated. My belly, it looked like I had a basketball in my belly. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know, but I'm not actually gaining weight. It's just right there. And my skin just felt scaly. And it was the worst experience ever. And I yeah, it's so when I think about it now, I think of how scared I currently am to go back to that. And I remember being in that moment, just looking at me, and I'm like, "Who are you?" I'm looking at myself in the mirror. Who are you? I don't
Hmm.
even recognize it.
We even looked back on like Facebook memories and stuff, and for the first year or so, I think after he got sober, I would look at them and I'd be like, "Oh, look at that," and I'd start laughing. Oh, this was a funny memory, and then I think what maybe like the last year or two, neither one of us even want to look at them. I've had to
Mm.
start deleting some of them because as much as we have had to learn how to heal together, those pictures on certain occasions will instantly take us back to that moment of what might have happened after that picture was taken. And that's one thing that we have been trying to work together with is he knows he knows how I felt during that time, but I also don't want to make him relive a lot of that. It makes me happy, so he doesn't have to see it, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
His happy my happiness depends on his happiness. If he doesn't have to see it, and I don't want him to like start, remembering certain things that, may or may not trigger some type of emotion for him. So yeah, so there's a lot of pictures that we've just had to delete over the last couple of years just so we don't have to all of a sudden, have that feeling back. The
To, to
past is the past. I mean, what happened, happened. There's nothing we can do to change any of it. So it's all just how you move forward with it. But it's sometimes those pictures, they will instantly trigger something.
you were bringing up we had to heal together.
Hmm.
What was the call? What was the incident that shifted everything?
It was him going to rehab.
But
Yep.
why? Why did you go to
So
rehab?
Why did I? Yeah, yeah, not a problem. So I finally hit rock bottom. Um, the what happened was I, like I told you before, I didn't know how to get out of this. My only way out of this was not rehab. My way out of this was by my own hands. Um, and I did not want to be here anymore. That was the only that was it telling me this is your only way out. There's nothing else that can get you out of this. And I remember I was at home from work that day, and I was ready to do it, and I'm texting her, Alicia, telling her that she's gonna have to pick up the kids today. I'm not gonna be able to, and I had it all planned out and you know, in a sober mind, I don't want to do this because that's not who I am. I know what that does to the ones that are still here. I know exactly what that does. And but it was telling me this is the only way. So I'm texting her that she's gonna have to pick up the kids. And for some reason, and I know the reason, and I'm sure you'll be able to tell the reason too. Um, in the midst of doing that, I had a phone number in my phone of this pastor that my dad had given to me and said, I want you to call him and maybe he can help you. And I know that he wasn't equipped to do this, but my dad was reaching, he was trying to figure out what he could do. Um, I had never talked to this pastor ever. I just had it in my phone and I told my dad I did. Um, I I called him by accident. I was not trying to call him. I was dead set on texting her, and I called him my phone, and I remember I was in this weird state of mind, and my vision was blurred, and I'm sweating, and going through withdrawal, and it's ringing, and I don't know what to do. I froze while the phone is ringing, and I'm like, I can't hang up. If I hang up, he's gonna call me back. Then I'm not gonna answer. He's gonna wonder, and all this is going in. So I just stayed on the phone. He answers, and I break down. I'm
Mm.
like, I need help. I was about to do this, and right away he drops what he's doing. We meet up, and we're at this coffee shop, and we're talking, and I'm crying, and I'm just so in my emotions, and he's like, I want you to pray with me. Now, mind you, I had never prayed before, ever before. I was not an avid churchgoer. I was not, I believed in God, and that's about as far as my religion went, if that's what you want to call it. My spirituality, that's better. Um, so he tells me, pray with me. And I'm like, I don't know how to pray. The only prayer I've ever heard was the Serenity Prayer, and that's in an AA meeting, And um, so he just said, just say what you feel, say what you need to say. And I don't remember it at all what I prayed for, but I actually did it. And suddenly, like this whole something changed in me. I could literally feel it in me. And we left that coffee shop, and I went home and I called the rehab and I set myself up with an appointment. Now, Alicia did still have to go get the kids because I was, not of right mind and I was completely wasted. But when she got home, I remember she can tell you this part better because I'm very it's a little iffy, but
A little
I
fuzzy.
remember her saying
Mm.
something about I I'm done, and I said, well, I checked myself into rehab.
Oh my gosh, you guys were at the same point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
coming home saying this is it, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm already there. I'm gone.
Yeah.
That's God. That's God
yeah.
at work right
Yes.
there. So Alicia,
Yes.
tell us what happened that night for you that you came to an I'm done point. What I haven't heard from you, Alicia, is I begged him, I nagged him, I cried, I said do this or I'm leaving. I haven't heard any of that. In fact, your man is saying my house was safer than any place else. You hadn't made the house a terror.
So I am not a big yeller. I don't like to argue. Um, my kids will beg to differ, but I really don't like to argue. And throughout all of this, I can count on one hand how many times he and I actually got into an argument over the drinking. Um, I can tell. can tell you each and every single time. There was one time I found a bunch of empty minis and I collected them, the little mini vodka bottles. I collected them until I had a certain amount. And he was outside one day and I got home and I could tell he was drunk. So I came upstairs and I took them all and I went outside and I threw them at him and I yelled something at him and he just stood there and stared at me. And then I went back inside. There was another time he was drinking and I had just had enough. And instead of me telling him how I was feeling, I did lash out. In fact, I came upstairs and he followed me and I was like, you know what? If you're going to drink, that means you don't love me. That means you don't love the kids. That means that we don't need to do this anymore. So, go do what you need to do. And I started taking our pictures, our wedding pictures off the wall. And I had a picture right here. It was a long, probably, five, I don't know, it was long. And I took everything off the wall and I put it down and he followed me. And because, a lot of alcoholics too are also extremely childish. So he followed me and I got so furious with him that he just at that point would not listen and would not leave me alone. I took one of the pictures and I slammed it against his leg, and cut his leg open and everything. So those I can tell you are the worst arguments that we've ever had. I wasn't the type of person that would beg and plead. I did. I took care of literally everything. I felt like I owed that to him because in my eyes, everybody else before me had given up on him.
Hmm.
And I thought, or I felt as though, he did save my life, by being in my life. I live with the, generalized anxiety and panic disorders and depression and OCD. And, I didn't come from the best childhood. I didn't come from the best first marriage. And I have learned to literally hold everything in. That's how I always thought I had to deal with everything, is just let me hold everything in and I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. But when he came into my life, he was the first person in my life that I could actually talk to. The first person in my life that I told everything, literally everything to. So I felt like I owed him something. I felt like he saved my life. So here I am, I'm going to try to save yours. But I didn't know what I was doing.
Hmm.
And it had gotten to that point that day. My car had broken down and I didn't have anybody to come pick me up because, he couldn't drive. So I called my sister-in-law and I asked her to come get me. And she was driving me and the kids back to the house and he kept calling. He was a what's that word? A repeat caller. And they constantly keep calling and calling. Anyway, so I finally answered, and somewhere along the line, all I could hear is, "It's my fault. My car broke down." I don't, in all honesty, I don't know if that's exactly what he said, but that's what I heard. This is my fault. My car broke down. Not his fault that he couldn't come pick me up. It was my fault. My car broke down. And I got home. I told the kids very quietly, I said, please go upstairs. I walked into the kitchen and he was already standing there. And I threw my stuff down and I pushed him. I didn't like forcefully push him, but I pushed him up against the counters. And I said, you have one of two choices. Either you get sober, you go get help, or I'm going upstairs, I'm packing your stuff, I'm taking you to either your brother's or my brother's house. I will take you to your dad's house. I didn't care. I said, but you're not going to stay here anymore until you get yourself fixed, until you can figure out how to get sober. And he stopped and he said, I've already called Ashley Treatment Center and I will be checking in 3 days. And at that point, I just dropped everything that I had been holding on to. I just fell. Because as many times as I had heard him say that he wanted to get sober before, that's the first time I ever believed him. The absolutely first time. There was something different in his eyes when he said it that time. And I've met a lot of people over the years that are in active addiction that'll say, yes, I'm going to get sober. You don't have the same look in your eyes unless you truly mean it. So I took him to the treatment center a couple days later and I came home, and it was the first time in 10, 15 years that I didn't have anybody else to take care of. I had my kids. It's
Yeah.
totally different though. It's a completely different story when it's your child. You love your child unconditionally no matter what. They're your child. But if it's your spouse, your partner, you choose to love each other, and you have to choose to love each other every day. And that was the first time in 10 years that I didn't have to take care of him. I knew he was safe. I knew that this was it. And I, at that point, made the promise to myself that if Damien is going to make the effort to get himself healthy, I was also going to do the same. So I started therapy myself. Ashley Treatment actually has a family weekend. So, but it was the beginning of COVID. So usually they would have like kids and everything go, but we couldn't take the kids. It was just me. And I made him that promise that weekend that I would not drink again myself. We both have talked about it a lot, that if I had kept drinking the way that I wasn't at that point, I wasn't a daily drinker. I was more of like a binge drinker, but he can attest, apparently I would get very nasty. And, I guess that's when all of the anger that I suppress when I'm not drinking would just come out. And if I had kept that up, what kind of wife would I have been? I'm not the one that has the issue. No, I'm not an alcoholic. But if I had kept going the way I was, that's not something that a partner or a spouse should do for their loved one in recovery. So I made that promise to him. So we both have been sober for 5 years, and it is still an everyday thing. We both are still learning so much about each other in the 5 years of being sober. It's kind of almost like we had to go through that honeymoon stage all over again.
That's the good part, though.
Yes, it is the good part. Yeah. So we did. We have to learn to love each other sober, and you have to learn how to love yourself sober as well. So I gave him the space that he needed to do that. He came home from rehab. It was literally right smack dab in the middle of COVID. We both ended up working from home, I guess like a week within, I think the whole world shut down on the 17th or 16th of March.
Yeah.
By the 26th of March, we were both working from home. And again, as much as, COVID really was horrible for everybody, it was a blessing for us, because that gave us the opportunity to spend that time together, spend the actual time together that we needed. And, he could work through the sobriety. We could work through it together. Both of us sat up here in this room working 2 different companies. And I think that honestly was the best thing that could have ever happened for both of us. And we've just had to learn, each other's mannerisms all over again. And he has become so much more understanding too of the mental health. It's not just the addiction that he has a firm grasp on. He has learned so much about the mental health. He he now knows what to look out for if I am in one of those spaces that's not a good space.
Mhm.
Whereas before, when he was drinking, he could have cared less. He never once like paid attention to me. And I'm not the type of person that needs to be number one, but I am your wife.
Mm.
So you see you're hurting me, but you don't see what it's actually doing to me. And he can see things like that now. He can see the little things that might happen to me throughout the day. My energy going from here down to here, the look in my face that, this is okay, we need to get her out of this situation, something like that. And he's never once since then been judgmental of any of the things that I live with as well on a day-to-day basis. And that I think has been the biggest step for both of us is, to let each other back in. And it's not an easy thing. There are still a lot of days that I just want to, and I try not to bring a lot of things up. That is the problem that I hear a lot of people in my position would do is, well, you did this to me, you did that to me. Don't you remember when you did this, things like that. And we've basically started to try to almost only remember those funny times.
Yeah.
There were a lot of funny times. There were a lot of, despite the drinking, there were, I'd say like 25% was like a funny time. So, we will sometimes bring those types of memories up, but I that's something that we both have had to do is just not bring up the hateful things towards it that a lot of people in my position would do.
You went through therapy. Damian got in a program. Sometimes that's still not enough. When people
Yeah.
get sober on both ends and life has been crazy, they look at each other and say, "I'm not sure who you are. I'm not sure I even like you anymore."
Mm-hmm.
What you said, COVID bringing you home was a
Mm-hmm.
positive, and there are a lot of positive stories about COVID, not
Yeah.
just about the new baby or the deep fryer, but those
Yeah.
types of things. What was it that actually built the trust again? Because you both, here's the thread that I'm going to pull on. You both
Mm.
have talked about safety, but in
Hmm.
different ways. When he was drinking, you were not worried about your physicality, but it was terrifying. But he said it was safe to be at home. So you're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're coming back in and saying, okay, as he began to get more emotionally aware, he was able to provide safety for you.
Mm-hmm.
Where does trust come in, guys?
Hmm. That
Mm.
uh, that was very hard to win back. I completely destroyed any trust that she or anybody else would have for me. That was the way I tried to build that back is by my actions. I when I got out of rehab, I enrolled into a trauma therapy, and I worked with another therapist as well, getting the counseling that I need because if I could not be good on my own, with myself, then I would be no good to anybody. So I thought that she was very understanding in that point where she knew that I had to do this for me first and foremost, because if not, then nothing else is going to work. She was very good with letting me do everything that I could to fix myself, no matter what that was. And I was able to build that trust back with the things that I was doing, with, you know, without saying I'm sorry, or how come you can't trust me, or how come I got to explain myself every time. And it's only because I can say it all I want, that you need to believe me, or I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that. And but it's so much different when I'm able to show you without even needing to say, believe me when I tell you this. I know that also, right out of rehab, I wanted to hold myself accountable. Accountability was very big, and it is very big in recovery. It helps build trust, but it also helps build your character as well, personally. So when I got out of rehab, there was this app that kind of it tracks you. It's Life 360, and it was fairly new. And I was like, I want that to be, I want to put that for myself, because at the time, she had gone back to work, but I was working from home for a little bit. So I needed to hold myself accountable. I had her download that, and I downloaded it on my phone. And just so I had that little piece that showed that I was actually trying. Now, there's many ways around that. That wasn't the only thing, but I needed that little bit to get me started, to get me going, to say I can do this. I can tell the truth. I can show you that I can do this. But more importantly, I can prove it to myself that I can do this, because that's who this is for in the very beginning. That's who it is for. Everything else comes after.
Mm. Yeah.
Your title, the title of your platform is Breaking the Silence. What does that mean to each of you?
Well, for me, oh, I'm sorry, you can go.
No, you're good. You're good.
So for me, it is breaking the stigma, breaking the judgments. A lot of people don't talk about addiction, or that about their active addiction, or their recovery and things like that. Or it's always frowned upon if you say you're an addict or an alcoholic, or you have mental illnesses, and all that. Breaking the silence means recovering out loud for those who are struggling in silence, for those who don't think that they're courageous enough to be like, I have this, but it does not define me. So that is the main source behind breaking the silence, which is also the title of my book as well. But in everything that we do, it revolves around that.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, you said the one thing that I usually say to people is it drives me insane when I hear people say, I suffer from anxiety, I suffer from depression. I don't suffer from it. Is it debilitating? It absolutely is debilitating, but I live with it because that's who I am. I am Alicia. I have anxiety. I have depression. I have OCD. I have all of these other things. That's just who I am. I don't ask people to ever walk on eggshells around me. Um, but so breaking the silence, as he's saying, like that is something that I take in almost the same fashion, except leaning more towards the mental health aspects, because we suffer just as, I'm sorry, we live just as much as the next person with it. It's it doesn't define who I am, just as if alcoholism doesn't define who Damien is. That's just a part of who we are. Um, and we both kind of the same way when it comes to, not walking on eggshells around each other. We're not afraid to talk to each other anymore about certain things. I think I've told him more in the last 5 years than I told him in the first 10 years that we were together. I personally have also just kind of expressed myself more with our group that we do, and, going out and getting myself out there and talking with him at certain places. I, I, that to me is all of, I'm breaking that pattern that I have, that shy little girl who would just keep everything inside because one, nobody cares, and two, I was just told, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Your thoughts and your feelings don't matter. And so again, as much as he has grown with his, recovery, his recovery has actually helped me be more vocal and open as well with, any of the struggles that I've had in my life. So it all kind of worked out, I guess, in the way that it was supposed to. But I couldn't be more grateful to have him still here. I think about that sometimes. 5 years ago, I could have lost my husband. I could have become a widow 5 years ago. And there's no one else in this world that I would rather go through the rest of my life with than him. And that, again, is something that as a spouse, you have to learn to love each other every single day. And it's a challenge that I think, both of us have worked through and will continue to work through no matter what. It's never going to be perfect. We know that, but we have our health and we have our faith, and we're moving on forward.
Tell us a little bit more about the groups and the things that you do now and how you go and share this.
Yeah, so we have a weekly group called Breaking Silence. We meet every Friday at a church here locally in Maryland, but we also do it via Zoom. And we also speak at rehabs and events for recovery and things like that. And doing these podcasts because there are so many out there who are like us, that need to hear that they're not alone. So yeah, just doing these speaking engagements, getting the word out to let us help. In reality, the unfortunate reality is that not everybody can be healed, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying. And I'm wholeheartedly believe in that. And no matter how it is, that's what we strive to do.
Yeah.
For the couple that is struggling today, that is listening to this, what is one thing that they could either do separately or together? I mean, one of the things I want to acknowledge is you guys didn't just suddenly go into couples counseling. You both did deep trauma work individually, which as we're growing in the understanding of this, it cannot be just one person. We didn't come into this relationship. I certainly didn't come into mine healthy. He didn't come in healthy. We both needed the work separately, and pushing the couples counseling can often be really damaging. So, for each person, if they're in a situation like you were in, what is the one thing they could do today to begin that healing process for themselves, knowing that we cannot fix or transform anybody else?
Therapy, getting yourself, no, yeah, it's, in fact, our therapist, or my therapist, has actually said, I don't think you guys need couples counseling. She's like, you guys, as a couple, you guys are good. As your single selves, you needed all the work. So it's the one thing that I think he had brought up previously, and it's something that we've always said is, you can't learn to love somebody else until you love yourself. And the number one, I firmly believe that everybody should go to therapy at least twice in their life, once as a kid and once as an adult. Because until you have that outside perspective, until you have that professional outside perspective of what you need to do to move forward, then you can start healing your relationship. I don't think if I hadn't gone to therapy, I honestly don't know if we would be exactly where we are right now, because I held so much in. I was holding all this hate and anger towards him and so many other people that I didn't know how to let it go. That was going to damage us. So from my side, I can tell you that the person sitting on the other end of that alcoholic or the drug addict or whoever, we need to heal first, just as much as that other person needs to heal. And then both sides need to take the strong understanding that it's not going to be fixed overnight, that Damian had to understand that Alicia needed to do healing, and Alicia needed to understand that Damian needed to do healing. And the only way that we were going to come together is if we healed ourselves first. And there has to be understanding from each side that if I were to ask Damian a question that might pertain to, hey, did you drink today? He would have to understand where that might be coming from instead of lashing out. And that is an issue that I hear a lot of spouses have, that, one spouse will say, well, why did you do this today? Did you do that today? And instead of listening to the person, they just hear the words. So you have to learn how to heal yourself, which can then heal each other. And then you have to learn how to actively listen and not just hear the words. So I think that's something that, I mean, again, it's something that we still have to do every single day, but that's the only way that I think that we would have made it even as far as we are right now.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think therapy is 100% needed, specifically trauma therapy, for the simple fact that a lot of addicts and alcoholics, has had some sort of trauma that led to their addiction as well. And if you don't dig deep and get that out of you, it's still going to linger. And the main thing is, a lot of people, as I will say personally, I thought this when I got sober, everything was supposed to just magically get better for me. My everything, my relationships and the relationships that I had ruined and things like that were all going to come back to me, and my job's going to get better. And no, that's not how it happens. You actively have to work on yourself, finding those character defects through trauma therapy. And if you have to have a trauma therapist and a regular therapist and get it, do everything that you can, that you don't want to miss any step in that process.
Thank you both for being here. I think we probably need another interview. There's a lot to unpack here, but
Yeah.
your candidness is fantastic. Damian, give us where we can find everything, where people can check in with you, be part of your group.
Absolutely. So on Facebook, we are on Breaking the Silence. We post updates there for our meeting and the meeting ID for Zoom for those out of the area. You can find us on Instagram as well with Breaking the Silence. And there is a link tree that has my email, a link to my book, and things like that you can communicate with us as well. And it has direct links to all of our socials. So I can pass that on to you as well, Tanya.
Absolutely. We'll put all those links below. And guys, I really appreciate you being here. I know how hard it is to coordinate to schedule
Yeah.
get everybody on the same page. Thank you so much, and blessings on your ministry as you're moving forward. And I'd love to have you back, and we'll talk some more. It's hard to get two voices in 1 hour. So thank you both.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. We
Anytime.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Faith Over Addiction podcast. Remember, nothing changes until something changes. Today is your day to step out in faith and make a difference. You are a daughter of the King. a woman who can spark incredible ripple effects of hope and healing, not just in your own life, but in your family, your community, and God's kingdom. If this episode encouraged you, bless someone else by sharing it. Send it to a friend who needs a little hope, or post it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. And hey, if you're ready to reclaim your God-given identity and create a safe, loving space for yourself and those you care about, let's talk. Book a quick call with me today, and I'd love to hear your story and help you take the next step. Oh, and don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Faith Over Addiction, and leave me a review. Your feedback not only makes my day, but helps other women find this podcast and step into freedom too. You are strong, you are loved, and the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life God has for you.